In the high deserts of New Mexico, where the wind carries the scent of sage and the mountains rise like silent sentinels, mission churches have stood for centuries. By day, their adobe walls glow in the sun, bells chime softly, and the quiet courtyards welcome travelers and worshippers alike. But by night, these sacred places take on a far darker presence. Shadows move where none should be. Footsteps echo along empty hallways. Whispers rise from ancient pews, repeating prayers long forgotten. Some visitors report seeing figures kneeling in silent devotion, even when the churches are empty. Some hear doors creak open or close on their own. Some feel cold drafts sweep through chapels, carrying a sense of loss and sorrow that cannot be explained. These mission churches were built on land steeped in history, conflict, and devotion. They have witnessed ceremonies of hope, but also deaths, disappearances, and untold suffering. Tonight, we journey through New Mexico to uncover the most haunted mission churches, where the past clings to the walls and the spirits of those long gone still walk the sacred halls. Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are safe and comfortable, because what we are about to explore lies far from bustling cities and familiar roads. New Mexico is a land of contrasts, vast deserts, towering mountains, and centuries-old adobe churches. The mission churches were built to serve the faithful, but the history they witnessed was not always peaceful. Indigenous communities, settlers, and missionaries all left their mark on these lands. Some lost their lives to conflict, disease, or accidents. Some departed with regrets that never found closure. Over time, these churches began to attract stories of the unexplained. Figures appear in corners where none should be. Candles flicker though no wind moves. Soft singing echoes long after the last visitor leaves. Before we step through the heavy wooden doors, let me ask you this. If you knelt alone in an abandoned mission church at midnight and saw a figure kneeling across from you, unmoving, would you stay and watch, or would you leave before it noticed you? Take a slow breath. And let us walk together into the haunted mission churches of New Mexico. San Miguel Mission in Santa Fe stands as one of the oldest churches in the United States, its adobe walls weathered by centuries of sun and wind. By day, the mission feels serene and welcoming. Sunlight streams through narrow windows, illuminating the worn pews and polished stone floors. Visitors move quietly, absorbing the calm weight of history, the feeling that this place has witnessed countless prayers, confessions, and ceremonies over generations. Yet beneath that calm, the mission holds an atmosphere that grows heavier after dark. When the sun sinks and the streets of Santa Fe quiet, the mission begins to feel different. Shadows stretch along the thick adobe walls. The air itself appears denser, cooler, carrying a subtle weight that is felt rather than seen. Inside, visitors sometimes report seeing a shadowy figure pacing the central aisle. The shape is tall, draped in what appears to be a long robe. It moves deliberately, stepping softly yet purposefully, as if carrying out duties left unfinished. The figure does not interact with those who see it, and when approached, it vanishes into the air or melts back into shadow, leaving the aisle empty once again. The effect is disorienting. The presence feels both distant and immediate, imposing yet intangible. As though they have entered a space where time folds back on itself. The bell of San Miguel Mission sometimes tolls on its own at night. There is no wind, no human hand to strike the bell, and yet its rhythm echoes the cadence of rituals long past. The sound is slow and deliberate, each toll punctuating the silence with a sense of ceremony that feels alive yet untethered to the present. Candles throughout the mission add to the eerie atmosphere. They flicker in darkness, though the air remains still. Flames bend as if stirred by unseen hands. Their movement casts long, shifting shadows across walls and vaulted ceilings. Patterns change imperceptibly, revealing the contours of statues, altars, and niches that house icons of saints and angels. The room feels inhabited by more than just memory, the flickering light giving life to the stories held within the adobe walls. A chill can sweep through the nave without warning, settling along the aisle and pews. Even those dressed warmly feel the sudden cold press in, carrying with it a sense of attention and presence that is difficult to shake. Some swear they hear whispered prayers in languages no longer spoken. Soft and low, they rise and fall in the dark corners of the mission. The words are unintelligible to modern ears, yet they carry a rhythm and cadence that suggest devotion, intention, and repetition. It is as if the voices are echoes of worshippers who lived centuries ago, continuing to speak even when the world outside has moved on. These sounds are subtle, fleeting, and often felt more than clearly heard. They do not rise to anger or warning. Instead, they carry a quiet reverence, a reminder of the sacred history of the building. The whispers sometimes overlap, creating a chorus that seems to respond to the presence of living visitors, fading whenever someone turns to look for the source. Standing in the mission at night is to enter a liminal space, one where past and present coexist. The pews, the floor, the walls, and the air itself all carry traces of centuries of devotion, fear, and hope. Every shadow seems to stretch into memory, every whisper recalls voices long gone. Those who linger describe a mixture of awe and unease. The shadowy figure, the tolling bell, the flickering candles, and the cold all combine to create a sense that the mission is alive in its own way, attentive to those who enter and careful to maintain its secrets. It does not threaten. It observes. It records. It responds to presence with subtle, unmistakable signs that the building remembers. Even when empty, the mission carries weight. The walls retain the energy of repeated prayers, of candles lit and extinguished, of generations marking time and faith. Visitors often sense the intensity of this history pressing gently against awareness, an invisible density that is felt more than explained. By morning, sunlight softens the adobe and warms the mission once more. Shadows recede, and the cold dissipates. Candles burn steadily with ordinary air. The bell is quiet, still. To a visitor arriving in daylight, San Miguel Mission seems peaceful, historic, and entirely human. Yet those who have spent hours in darkness remember what lingers when the day is gone. They remember the pacing figure. The bell tolling itself. The flickering candles. The whispered prayers in tongues long silent. They remember the sensation of centuries pressing in, watching and aware. San Miguel Mission stands quietly in Santa Fe, a testament to endurance, faith, and mystery. It is one of the oldest churches in the nation, and it carries with it the weight of time. By day, it is history made tangible. By night, it is alive with memory, presence, and the quiet voices of devotion that have never truly left the walls. Those who enter carry away both impressions. The beauty and solemnity of the building itself, and the sense that in the still of night, the mission watches, remembers, and whispers with a life all its own. San Francisco de Asís Church stands quietly in the heart of Ranchos de Taos, its adobe walls glowing warmly in the daylight. Sunlight spills across the rounded corners and thick, earthen walls, highlighting the texture of centuries of plaster and mud. The structure feels grounded, solid, and inviting, a place of rest and contemplation. Visitors often pause outside, taking in the view, sensing the weight of history embedded in the adobe and the soil beneath. Inside, the church exudes a calm presence during the day. Sunlight filters through small windows, casting geometric patterns of light and shadow across the worn floors. Pews are arranged with purpose, facing the altar, guiding eyes and attention forward. The air carries faint traces of incense, dust, and the warmth of adobe heated by the sun. It feels timeless, a place where time moves slower and reflection is inevitable. As evening approaches, the mood shifts subtly. The sunlight fades, leaving interior spaces cooler and darker. Shadows deepen along the thick walls, stretching across corners and around doorways. The sense of enclosure grows more pronounced. The adobe that felt welcoming in daylight begins to feel heavy, almost oppressive, as if the structure itself is aware of every movement inside it. Visitors report noticing shadows that seem to shift on their own. They move along the walls, stretching and compressing with no apparent source. Sometimes they appear at the edge of vision, disappearing when directly looked at, leaving only a subtle sense of unease. The motion is deliberate yet silent, as if following the rhythm of a prayer no one can hear. In addition to shifting shadows, people describe hearing the creaking of pews. It is never constant, never rhythmic, but sporadic, as though someone has just risen and moved away. The sound resonates through the still interior, carrying farther than it should. The creaks startle at first, then linger, emphasizing the quiet and the stillness that surrounds the listener. When visitors approach the source of these sounds, they find nothing. Pews remain empty. Floors are clear. The church appears untouched by movement, yet the echoes remain in memory. Some describe the sensation of being watched, not threatening, but attentive, as though the church itself remembers the actions of those who once occupied it. Figures have been seen kneeling in prayer near the altar or along the aisles. They appear still and focused, entirely absorbed in devotion. Their presence is quiet, almost reverent. When approached, they vanish, leaving only the space they once occupied and the impression that they were real. These apparitions are fleeting, never aggressive, but leave a strong emotional imprint on those who witness them. Local lore offers one explanation. Stories suggest that workers who died during the church's construction linger here in perpetual prayer. They remain tied to the walls they helped build, kneeling and rising, attending to the spaces they shaped with their hands. The sense of devotion is palpable, even when the figures cannot be seen. The atmosphere inside the church feels charged with presence, as if each wall, beam, and pew holds a memory of labor, faith, and care. This feeling of lingering devotion blends with the architecture itself. The thick adobe walls, curved corners, and low ceilings create intimate spaces that amplify sound and shadow. Footsteps echo differently here, carrying a weight that seems more than physical. The scent of earth and aged plaster adds depth to the experience, reminding visitors that the space is both solid and alive in memory. At night, the church is most potent in atmosphere. Natural light disappears entirely, leaving only minimal illumination from small lamps or moonlight filtering through windows. Natural light disappears entirely, leaving only minimal illumination from small lamps or moonlight filtering through windows. Shadows dominate, lengthening across the floor and climbing along walls. The shifting darkness enhances perception, making small movements and sounds more noticeable. The creaking of a single pew, the faint outline of a kneeling figure, or a subtle shift in shadow feels magnified. The emotional effect of the church at night is profound. Visitors often describe a mixture of awe and unease. It is not fear in the conventional sense, but a weight, a reminder of lives lived and labor invested. The presence of unseen watchers, of devotion frozen in time, creates a complex and layered experience that lingers long after leaving. Some linger longer than intended, drawn by curiosity or the feeling of shared history. They move slowly along aisles, noticing the way shadows fall, how echoes return, how the space seems to breathe with memory. Others leave quickly, unsettled by the weight of presence and the unexplainable sights and sounds that accompany it. By morning, the church returns to its daylight state. The adobe warms in the sun. Shadows shrink and become static. Sounds of creaking pews fade. The figures, if they appeared at all, are gone. Yet the impression remains. Visitors remember the shifting shadows, the kneeling forms, and the sense that devotion here extends beyond life itself. San Francisco de Asís Church continues to stand as it has for centuries, a monument of faith and craftsmanship. Its adobe walls remain sturdy, welcoming by day, yet holding memory and presence that reveal themselves in the stillness of night. The church does not seek attention. It does not demand explanation. It simply preserves what was built, and what remains within the hearts and memories of those who walk its halls. For those who visit after dark, the experience leaves a lasting impression. The sound of pews moving without touch. Shadows that move on their own. Figures kneeling in silent prayer. San Francisco de Asís Church is more than architecture. It is memory made tangible, presence made visible, and history that can be felt. It is a place where the past continues to watch, wait, and pray. San Esteban del Rey Mission rises proudly atop the mesa of Acoma Pueblo, its adobe walls warm in the light of the sun and solid against the sweeping sky. The land stretches outward in every direction, a panorama of mesas, canyons, and desert plains. By day, the mission feels enduring and serene, a place where time seems to move slowly, carrying the weight of centuries yet offering stillness to those who visit. The stone pathways wind along the edge of the mesa, connecting the mission with small courtyards and vantage points. They are smooth from years of use, yet their layout can feel confusing to newcomers. Turning and ending abruptly, leading to nowhere visible. Visitors often pause here, taking in the views and imagining the people who once walked these stones, their lives intertwined with the mission and the land below. As the day fades, shadows lengthen along the walls and pathways. The air cools quickly, carrying the dry scent of desert and distant sage. The sun dips behind mesas, and the colors of the adobe glow against the darkening sky, softening edges and deepening hollows. Even in this quiet, there is a subtle movement in the mind of those who linger. Footsteps are sometimes heard on the stone pathways. They are faint at first, measured, deliberate, echoing lightly against walls and earth. They follow the curves of paths that appear to lead nowhere, stopping at points with no destination. Visitors hear them clearly, yet when they move to investigate, no one is there. The sound seems to belong both to the past and the present, a reminder that this place has long been traveled and observed. Figures appear occasionally within the mission. Through windows, some report glimpsing forms clad in old missionary attire, robes and habits moving silently in halls or kneeling near the altar. They do not approach, nor do they make sound. Their presence is fleeting, a quick impression at the edge of vision, and when observers look again, the spaces are empty. These glimpses evoke both awe and a quiet unease, a sense that history is layered over every stone. As night deepens, the wind becomes a carrier of sounds that seem alive within the walls. A faint singing rises and falls with the breeze, melodic and soft, almost as if a choir is rehearsing within the thick adobe. The notes are distant, ethereal, and cannot be traced to a visible source. They linger in the air, wrapping around doorways, courtyards, and corridors. Visitors pause to listen, their attention drawn to the invisible music that seems to hold centuries of devotion, ritual, and memory. The combination of sounds, shadows, and glimpsed figures transforms the mission at night. The sweeping views that were serene by day feel immense and isolating, the edge of the mesa a reminder of both vulnerability and perspective. Every pathway and doorway seems to carry memory, every corner a quiet observer. Those who walk these spaces report heightened awareness, noticing details that daylight would disguise, a faint echo, the subtle movement of curtains, the play of moonlight on adobe walls. The mission itself appears to hold the history of its builders and visitors in its very stones. Every footstep, every whispered prayer, every sung hymn is embedded in the walls, pathways, and floors. At night, it feels as though these layers of memory rise slightly from their place, creating subtle motion, faint sound, and shifting light that can be seen or felt by those present. The space seems alive, but in a calm and patient way, neither threatening nor urgent, simply aware. Visitors often describe a feeling of being observed while walking the mission grounds after dark. The sensation is not of someone watching directly, but of the building itself holding attention, responding to presence with a slight change in atmosphere. Responding to presence with a slight change in atmosphere. Cool drafts may circle courtyards where the wind should not reach. Shadows may move against the flow of moonlight. And distant singing may swell slightly when one stops to listen. These are subtle cues, layering perception and memory. Connecting the present with centuries past. Despite the haunting sensations, the mission remains a place of reverence. There is no malevolence in the walls or pathways, only a quiet power rooted in history, architecture, and the natural landscape. The adobe absorbs sound and light differently, shaping perception, while the Mesa's elevation and surrounding canyons create natural acoustics that carry movement and song across distance. What feels eerie is also deeply beautiful, a reminder of human endeavor and faith spanning generations. Those who stay through nightfall often leave with impressions that linger. The sense of being watched, the echoes of footsteps, the glimpses of figures, and the faint singing are carried in memory long after leaving the mesa. Even in the modern world, the mission conveys a connection to the past that cannot be fully explained but must be felt. Visitors speak of awe mingled with unease, a recognition of the persistence of history in the living environment. By morning, the mission appears unchanged. Sunlight returns warmth to the adobe, shadows retreat, and the wind carries only ordinary sounds of birds and distant desert. Footsteps vanish from the stone pathways, and the glimpsed figures are gone, leaving spaces empty and silent. Yet those who were present after dark retain the experience, a vivid impression that the mission holds life and memory beyond what the eye can see. San Esteban del Rey Mission at Acoma Pueblo stands as a testament to architecture, faith, and endurance. Built atop a mesa, commanding sweeping views, it carries echoes of the past that emerge when the world grows still. Footsteps trace unseen paths, figures in old attire appear briefly, and wind-borne singing drifts through thick adobe walls. By day, it is serene and commanding. By night, it is alive with memory, subtle presence, and history that cannot be ignored. Visitors who approach the mission after dark walk carefully, aware of the layered experiences that may reveal themselves. Every stone, pathway, and window carries stories, offering glimpses into lives lived centuries ago. The mission remains steadfast, bridging past and present, beauty and mystery, history, and the subtle whispers that emerge when night falls upon the mesa. Nuestra C+± Hora de la Candelaria stands quietly in the valley, framed by rolling hills and mesas that rise sharply around it. The adobe walls glow softly in sunlight, their warm tones contrasting with the ever-shifting shadows cast by clouds drifting overhead. The valley is prone to sudden mists, and when the fog rolls in, the church feels suspended between earth and sky, half visible, half hidden, as though it exists in a world slightly removed from the one travelers know. During the day, the church appears serene. Visitors pass along worn paths, stepping carefully over stone and dirt. The air is filled with the scent of sage and earth, and the soft hum of wine through the valley provides a quiet accompaniment to the warmth of the sun. The chapel doors welcome those who enter, offering a cool contrast to the light outside. Inside, the space feels calm, orderly, and devoted, steeped in centuries of history. Yet even on warm days, visitors often report cold drafts inside the chapel. Air flows through the aisles without source, brushing across the skin and raising goosebumps along arms and neck. The drafts are subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but they persist, drifting from corners, from beneath doors, from the spaces between beams. Standing still, the sensation grows, pressing gently without harm, a reminder that the building itself may hold the echoes of past presence. As the sun lowers and shadows stretch across the valley, the church takes on a different character. Light filters through narrow windows, casting long streaks across the adobe floors. The quiet intensifies. The warmth from earlier hours fades, replaced by a gentle, pervasive chill that seems to move with the visitor rather than the wind. After sunset, whispers begin to appear. They are soft and low, carried across the sanctuary as though gliding above the floors. The sounds do not form clear words. Rise and fall in tone, sometimes fleeting, sometimes lingering, never repeating in a way that allows comprehension. The source invisible but insistently close. Approaching the source changes nothing. The sound does not respond to movement, to speech, or to attention. It simply exists, weaving between the living and the history contained in the adobe walls. Those who remain for long periods often describe a growing awareness in the chapel. Every step seems measured. Every creak of wood is amplified. The air itself feels attentive. Near the altar, some visitors see figures kneeling in prayer. They are faint at first, their outlines blurred as though formed from light and shadow rather than solid matter. The figures remain motionless, their presence solemn, almost reverent. Standing in the same space, the observer may feel the air thicken slightly, a pull of energy that is more sensation than threat. When approached, these kneeling figures fade. Step closer and the outlines dissolve, leaving only empty space before the altar. No footprints remain. No sounds accompany their departure. They vanish as quietly as they appeared, leaving a lingering impression of devotion, of attention, and of history that refuses to be confined to memory alone. The valley surrounding Nuestra C ± Hora de la Candelaria contributes to the experience. Fog moves in unexpectedly, filling the space between walls and hills. Shadows lengthen and shift with the terrain. Sound carries differently here, bending across the open land and amplifying whispers, footsteps, and distant murmurs. The combination of isolation, topography, and history creates a chapel that feels alive even in the absence of human activity. Visitors report a consistency to these phenomena. Cold drafts persist regardless of season. Whispers appear after sunset. Kneeling figures by the altar are seen repeatedly, each instant slightly different yet unmistakably present. The chapel seems to hold on to these experiences, allowing the living to sense what time has layered upon the space. Local residents speak cautiously of the church at night. They acknowledge its sacred nature and its history. While warning visitors of the sensation that fills the air. Some avoid lingering inside after dark. Others choose to walk slowly, attentive to every sound, every draft, every shift in light. All describe the experience with a reverence born of awareness, not fear. The architecture itself contributes to the effect. Thick adobe walls hold temperature differently, creating pockets of cooler air. Narrow hallways and angled beams bend sound unpredictably, carrying whispers farther than expected. Windows filter the moonlight, creating moving patterns that can suggest figures where none exist. Yet these physical explanations cannot account entirely for the emotional weight, the feeling of being observed, and the consistent appearances of figures kneeling in devotion. The chapel impresses upon those inside a sense of continuity, a connection to past worshippers whose presence lingers. The experience is immersive, enveloping, and quietly persistent. It teaches awareness of space, light, sound, and time in ways that remain long after leaving. Exiting the chapel brings relief yet leaves an enduring impression. The air returns to its ordinary warmth. Sounds become ordinary. Light behaves predictably. Yet memory retains the cold drafts, the whispers, and the presence by the altar. Visitors carry the experience with them, aware that the chapel exists not only in the present but also layered with what has come before. Nuestra C ± Hora de la Candelaria at Jemez Pueblo is more than a structure. It is a keeper of history, devotion, and subtle phenomena. It sits quietly in the valley, accessible to those who approach. Yet profoundly different after sunset. The cold air, drifting whispers, and kneeling figures are not threats but reminders of continuity, of observation, and of the depth of presence that inhabits the space. For those who enter, the chapel offers a lesson in attention, patience, and awareness. Every corner, every draft, every faint figure encourages focus and respect. Even in the absence of visible activity, the building feels alive, holding centuries of worship, footsteps, and whispered prayers in its walls and air. For those who enter, the chapel offers a lesson in attention, patience, and awareness. It is a place where history meets perception, where the past is tangible, and where silence itself speaks volumes. San José de la Laguna Mission stands quietly on the edge of the pueblo, its adobe walls weathered by centuries of sun and wind. The mission has been abandoned at times, yet the place never feels completely empty. The stone and plaster carry weight, the history of generations folded into every room, every archway, every corridor. Even when doors are locked and windows sealed, the mission seems to breathe, alive with memory. During the day, the structure appears serene. Sunlight glints off the smooth adobe, illuminating simple details carved into the walls and beams. Shadows from the arches stretch across the courtyard, moving slowly with the sun. The church feels open and welcoming, yet the stillness holds a subtle tension. Footsteps echo too clearly on stone floors. The air seems thicker near the altar and along the narrow passageways. As evening approaches, the mission changes. Light fades, and the shadows grow long and restless. The courtyard becomes a lattice of darkness and warmth. Every corner seems deeper than it should be. The stone absorbs the sun's heat slowly, releasing it in faint waves that stir the air. The building feels larger at night, its walls containing more space than the eye can measure. It is during these hours that visitors first notice the unusual movement. Shadows flicker across walls, brief and deliberate, appearing along the edges of doorways, or crawling across the nave. They do not resemble people, yet they move with intention, pausing and then vanishing as if recoiling from observation. The flickers are subtle but unmistakable, leaving a trace in the mind long after the eyes are turned elsewhere. Soft footsteps follow next. The sound comes from corridors that have been locked for years, doors sealed and rooms unused. The rhythm is slow, deliberate, consistent. The footsteps do not echo in a way that matches the building's structure. The sound belongs somewhere between reality and memory, present but unreachable. Visitors often stop mid-step, trying to locate the source, only to find empty hallways stretching into shadow. The sounds do not correspond with any human presence. No guards, no caretakers, no travelers appear when footsteps are heard. The noise persists briefly and then fades, leaving an uneasy silence. Those who experience it describe a tension in the air, a tightening of the chest that accompanies awareness of unseen observation. Visitors moving toward exits often feel another presence. It is not physical, not a hand on the shoulder or a brush against the skin, but a sensation of company. The feeling follows them, growing slightly as they navigate the courtyard or descend worn stone steps. It does not speak. It does not gesture. It simply occupies space alongside them. A quiet insistence that the mission is aware of every movement. The effect is cumulative. Longer visits amplify the impression that the building itself is alive, responding subtly to attention. Rooms that are empty during the day seem charged with memory at night. Hallways appear longer. The corners of the eyes catch shapes that vanish when looked at directly. The building conveys the sense of being observed without confrontation, watching without speaking. The architecture contributes to this sensation. Even small changes in wind or ambient sound carry differently, echoing and layering to create patterns. Footsteps can seem closer or farther away than they are. Voices of the wind or distant animals become indistinguishable from whispers. The building absorbs and reflects sound in a way that amplifies awareness. Built centuries ago, it has hosted generations of worship, study, and gathering. Lives began, ended, and passed through these walls. Events of significance occurred quietly in corners, behind doors, and along aisles. The cumulative weight of countless moments, repeated rituals, and human emotion has imprinted itself on the structure. Some believe that the shadows and footsteps are echoes of the past, moments repeating themselves when conditions are quiet and attention is focused. The presence that follows visitors may be a memory of the building's caretakers, worshippers, and travelers, lingering as a protective awareness, silently guiding or observing. Others feel the mission is simply aware, absorbing consciousness and reflecting it back in subtle ways. Those who experience the phenomena often leave with mixed feelings. Relief comes upon exiting through the main doors. The sensation of being followed fades slowly. The mission appears serene once more, doors sealed and shadows reduced to normal patterns of light. Yet memory preserves every flicker, every step, every sensation of awareness. The experience lingers like the fading smell of incense or the imprint of sunlight on adobe. Returning to the mission during daylight reveals only a quiet, historic building. Sunlight softens the walls. Shadows shrink to measured patterns. Sunlight softens the walls. Footsteps echo predictably. Shadows shrink to measured patterns. Sunlight softens the walls. The unusual movement and presence feel distant, almost imagined. Yet those who have spent nights within its walls know the difference. Yet those who have spent nights within its walls know the difference. They remember exactly how the shadows moved and where the unseen company seemed closest. San Jose de la Laguna Mission continues to stand on the edge of the pueblo, a testament to time and resilience. It welcomes visitors with open spaces and familiar architecture, yet it never relinquishes the weight of its history. Each room, corridor, and archway holds fragments of lives past, waiting for attention. Even in absence, the mission remains aware. When evening falls, shadows begin to flicker again across walls. Footsteps sound in sealed hallways. A presence accompanies those departing through the courtyard. The building observes silently, neither hostile nor benign. Reminding all who enter that this mission has never truly been empty. And that some places hold memory and life in ways that cannot be measured or ignored. San Felipe de Neri in Albuquerque sits at the heart of Old Town, its adobe walls standing for centuries of devotion and history. By day, the church feels warm and welcoming. Sunlight filters through tall windows, casting patterns across worn wooden pews and the stone floor. Visitors move quietly, sensing the weight of generations who have entered these doors, prayed, and left their mark on the building through faith and presence. Yet beneath that calm exterior, San Felipe de Neri holds a subtle, persistent sense of the extraordinary. As evening falls and the town quiets, the atmosphere inside the church changes. Shadows stretch across the aisles, blending with the flickering light of candles and the contours of the altar. The air grows cooler, heavier, and the stillness deepens. Sounds travel differently at night, each footstep echoing more clearly along the floor, each whisper of air through a door amplified by the quiet. Visitors have reported seeing a priestly figure at the pulpit long after services have ended. The figure is tall, dressed in a robe reminiscent of centuries past, moving with calm, deliberate motions. Moving with calm, deliberate motions, he appears as though he is preparing for Mass or reviewing prayers. Yet when approached, the figure fades into shadow, leaving the space empty. Leaving the space empty, creating a sensation of reverence and awe in those who witness it. Candles in the church behave strangely during these hours. Some ignite on their own, flames springing to life briefly, before dimming or extinguishing without cause. The movement is gentle, without flickering wildly or casting harsh shadows. The light illuminates the altar and pews just enough to make the space feel alive, as if the church itself is breathing in the still night. Along with these visual phenomena, some visitors describe the sensation of being touched lightly. A hand may brush a shoulder or rest on an arm, cool and weightless, leaving a tingling impression. The feeling is brief and non-threatening, yet it creates a heightened awareness, a sense that the church is attentive to those within its walls. The combined experience of seeing figures, observing candlelight ignite, and feeling unseen presence produces an atmosphere both sacred and unsettling. Time seems to stretch differently. Moments slow. The pews, altar, and walls feel less like static objects and more like participants in a silent ritual that continues even after human activity has ceased. San Felipe de Neri's history provides context for these occurrences. Established hundreds of years ago, the church has been a center of faith and ceremony through generations. Priests, parishioners, and travelers have walked its aisles, carrying devotion, concern, and hope. Every act of prayer and ceremony has left an imprint on the space, subtle echoes that persist beyond the visible world. The nightly phenomena do not feel malicious. There is no sense of threat or danger. Instead, they convey presence, continuity, and memory. The figure at the pulpit, the candles that ignite on their own, the faint brush of a hand all suggest the church is alive in its own way, holding on to devotion and acknowledging those who enter. Standing in the nave, visitors often report a mixture of awe and humility. The history of faith becomes tangible in the shadows, in the flicker of candlelight. In the sense that one is not alone. The space seems to respond to attention, almost guiding those within to move slowly, to listen, to respect the weight of the centuries. The effect is cumulative. Hours in the church can feel longer than they are. Steps are careful and deliberate. Breathing becomes more conscious. Silence becomes layered, filled with the echoes of ritual, memory, and presence. Each sound of footstep, creak of wood, rustle of robisa feels amplified, as though connected to a larger, unseen rhythm. Visitors who remain into the deepest hours of night often feel a connection to the generations who walked the church before them. It is not spiritual in the traditional sense alone. It is temporal, a sense of history made tangible through sight, sound, and touch. Those who witness the figure, the candles, or the gentle brush of air report leaving with a heightened sense of reverence and respect for both the building and the faith it has housed. By morning, sunlight returns warmth and clarity to the church. The candles burn normally. Shadows recede. The figure at the pulpit is nowhere to be seen. The brush of unseen hands is gone, leaving only the familiar weight of adobe walls and wooden pews. To a daytime visitor, the church may appear unchanged, entirely ordinary, its extraordinary moments confined to night and shadow. Yet those who have experienced the night understand differently. They carry with them the memory of quiet presence, of devotion repeated beyond human observation, and of a place where faith persists as something palpable, alive, and attentive. San Felipe de Neri stands in Albuquerque as both historical landmark and living space of mystery. It holds the past within its walls, allowing it to surface in subtle ways when the world grows quiet. The church invites reflection, observation, and respect, reminding visitors that centuries of devotion linger still, watching and waiting. Long after the doors have closed and the pews have emptied. Watching and waiting, long after the doors have closed and the pews have emptied. Night at San Felipe de Neri is not simply absence of daylight. It is an awakening of memory, a continuation of faith. And a space where presence is felt in ways both tangible and elusive. For those who enter, it is an experience of history, reverence, and quiet wonder. lingering long after they have left the adobe walls behind. San Buenaventura Church in Espa plus or minus Ola sits quietly amidst the town, its modest adobe walls exuding a sense of age and presence. By day, the small structure appears simple and welcoming. Sunlight warms the earth-toned exterior, and the bells, when rung, carry a gentle tone across the plaza. Visitors often pause to admire the handcrafted beams and rounded corners, noting the care and devotion that shaped every part of the building. It is easy to see the church as a place of calm, reflection, and community. Inside, the church feels intimate. The ceilings are low, the walls thick, and the pews arranged to guide focus toward the altar. Light filters through small windows, casting soft patterns across the floor. The scent of aged wood, candle wax, and plaster fills the air. In daylight, the building encourages a sense of quiet contemplation, a space where one can step away from the outside world and feel grounded in the present. A space where one can step away from the outside world and feel grounded in the present. As evening approaches, the character of the church changes subtly. Shadows lengthen along the walls. Light from windows diminishes, leaving corners dim and undefined. The interior becomes cooler, and every sound seems to carry farther than expected. Footsteps echo with a clarity that surprises visitors. The warm comfort of the day gives way to a heavier stillness. It is during these hours that some visitors report hearing footsteps in hallways that should be empty. The sound is slow and deliberate, carrying through the thick adobe corridors. Each step echoes against the walls and floor, fading only to return moments later, as if someone unseen continues their movement through the church. Guests often pause, listening carefully, only to find the halls empty when they look. Soft weeping sometimes rises from the side chapels, quiet and almost hesitant. The sound is faint at first, carried lightly on the cool evening air, then grows subtly, echoing off the walls in a rhythm that feels human. When approached, the sound often stops. No figure is seen. No disturbance in the pews or floor indicates presence. The weeping vanishes as inexplicably as it appears, leaving the visitor uncertain of what was real. Figures are reported within the interior. They are most often seen kneeling silently, sometimes at the altar, sometimes along the side chapels. The shapes are dark, undefined, yet clearly human in posture. Visitors describe the sensation of pause, a sense that the figures are aware of being watched yet do not respond. Visitors describe the sensation of pause, a sense that the figures are aware of being watched yet do not respond. The experience is quiet, without alarm, yet profoundly affecting. The presence is solemn, patient, and attentive. The presence is solemn, patient, and attentive. The architecture of San Buenaventura contributes to this atmosphere. The thick adobe walls hold sound and shadow in ways that amplify subtle movements and noises. Light and dark interact dramatically inside, making corners deeper and spaces between pews feel more intimate. Even the smallest creak of a floorboard or rustle of clothing resonates through the interior, giving weight to ordinary sounds. Visitors report that the feeling of presence extends beyond specific sights and sounds. The air itself feels charged, as though memory has settled into the structure. Time seems to stretch within the church, slowing perception. Long moments pass without action, yet they feel significant. The quiet encourages awareness, heightening perception of small details and subtle movements. Some locals say that these experiences are tied to the church's history. Stories speak of devotion, labor, and loss. People who lived and worshipped here left traces of themselves in ritual, prayer, and daily presence. The hallways and chapels may still carry fragments of these lives, reverberating through sound, shadow, and perception. Even when figures or sounds are not perceived, the atmosphere maintains its depth. Walking through the church at night creates a heightened awareness of space and structure. The thick walls, low ceilings, and warm shadows combine to focus attention. Every step, every echo, every flicker of light contributes to the feeling that the church itself is attentive. The experience does not tend toward fear. It is more solemn than frightening, an acknowledgement of presence rather than a threat. Visitors often describe a mixture of reverence and unease, a recognition that the space holds memory and intent beyond the observable. The church seems patient, allowing observation without demanding explanation. By morning, the interior returns to its daylight character. Sunlight filters through the windows once more, warming the adobe walls and softening shadows. Any fleeting figures are gone. Footsteps and weeping are absent. The building appears calm and ordinary. Yet the impressions remain for those who experienced the nighttime hours. The memory of footsteps echoing. Of soft weeping. Of kneeling figures that vanish. The quiet attentiveness of the space leaves an emotional mark. A subtle understanding that the church contains more than can be seen. San Buenaventura continues to stand as it has for centuries, small in size but vast in presence. Its adobe walls carry both warmth and weight, holding the echoes of worship, labor, and devotion. A place where history lingers tangibly, a site of observation and reflection, where shadows and sound converge to create an experience that is quiet, profound, and unmistakably alive. For visitors who walk its halls after dark, the church offers a lesson in attention. The past is never entirely absent. Presence remains, patient and silent, waiting to be acknowledged. Kneeling in reverence. And vanishing only when approached. San Buenaventura is both home and memory. Sacred and enduring. A place where time feels suspended. And attention becomes a bridge to what has endured. Santo Domingo Mission sits quietly within the heart of Santo Domingo Pueblo. Its adobe walls rising with understated grace. Framed by desert hills and the vast sky above. By day, the mission feels alive with history. A place shaped by centuries of devotion. Craftsmanship, and human presence. Visitors walk along worn pathways. Drawn to the intricate wooden carvings that adorn doors, altars, and ceilings. Each one telling stories of faith and artistry preserved through generations. The carvings are meticulous, detailed, and full of life. During daylight, the work inspires admiration, an appreciation for the skill and patience of those who crafted it. Faces, symbols, and scenes seem almost animate, as if shaped with the intent to convey movement and emotion. An appreciation for the skill and patience of those who crafted it. The sunlight streams through small windows, highlighting textures and casting gentle shadows that bring depth to every figure and pattern. As evening falls, the mission begins to shift subtly. Shadows stretch along the adobe walls, the air cools, and the stillness grows more pronounced. Light fades, leaving corridors and chapels partially illuminated, where the wooden carvings take on a different presence. In the fading light, visitors sometimes notice a subtle change, the edges of the carvings seem to shift just slightly in the peripheral vision. The faces of saints or angels appear to turn, hands seem to move, and patterns rearrange imperceptibly. When looked at directly, everything appears unchanged. The atmosphere of the mission thickens with scent and sound. Faint traces of incense drift through empty chapels, curling in the air with no visible source. The aroma is gentle but persistent, carrying with it an aura of ritual and devotion that feels older than memory itself. The incense seems to linger, marking time and space within the mission in a way that feels both sacred and enigmatic. Alongside these sensations, voices emerge. They are quiet at first, seeming to rise from the adobe walls themselves. Long prayers chanted in a rhythm that fills the space without a discernible source. The sound is neither loud nor startling. It resonates softly, weaving through the nave, curling around the altars. And echoing gently in the vaulted ceilings. Those who hear it often pause, uncertain whether the voices are real or conjured by the stillness and their own attention. Movement, scent, and sound intertwine as the night deepens. The carvings continue to appear slightly different when glimpsed from the corner of the eye. The incense drifts along hallways, lingering longer than airflow should allow. The chanting rises and falls in cadence, creating a presence that seems deliberate, patient, and enduring. Visitors report feeling watched, not by a single figure, but by the mission itself, as though it holds memory and intent within every stone, beam, and carved surface. The experience is never aggressive or frightening. It is quiet, reflective, and immersive. The mission does not demand attention or frighten those who explore it. Instead, it reveals layers of history, devotion, and artistry, connecting the present moment with centuries of worship and human presence. The carvings, incense, and chanting are threads in a living tapestry, unfolding subtly for those who remain attentive and still. Even the air feels different here at night. Cool currents flow through corridors and chapels, brushing against skin and hair as if moving with purpose. Small sounds echo slightly differently, as footsteps or whispers seem carried by invisible hands. The weight of presence is gentle, yet unmistakable, guiding movement and perception. Time seems to slow, each breath and step drawing attention to textures, scents, and soundscapes that would be missed during the daytime bustle. Those who linger experience a deep sense of continuity. The mission feels alive not in a conventional way, but in its preservation of human intention. Every carved figure embodies centuries of devotion. Every layer of incense carries ritual performed over generations. Every chant resonates with voices that may have ceased long ago but persist in memory and structure. The mission becomes a space where past and present coexist, overlapping in perception and subtle experience. Despite the subtle disorientation, visitors leave with a sense of reverence rather than fear. The carvings, shadows, and voices leave impressions that linger long after leaving the building. Memory and imagination entwine, creating a connection to the history, spirituality, and artistry of the people who shaped the mission and maintained it across generations. These impressions can surface unexpectedly in later quiet moments, reminding those who witnessed them of the enduring presence of the mission. By morning, Santo Domingo Mission appears calm and grounded once more. The chapels seem empty and silent, yet the memory of movement, subtle voices, and shifting shadows remains. The mission stands as a testament to human craftsmanship and devotion, inviting exploration, reflection, and quiet awareness. Santo Domingo Mission at Santo Domingo Pueblo embodies more than architecture. It preserves a living history in stone and wood, in scent and sound. At night, carvings seem to move slightly, incense appears from nowhere, and voices chant long prayers in empty chapels. The space teaches patience, attention, and respect for the layers of memory that endure within its walls. Visitors walk away carrying not only images of beauty but also a sense of connection to something timeless, subtle, and profoundly present. The mission continues to rise atop the mesa, commanding both view and attention, guiding the observer through a world shaped by devotion, artistry, and memory. In its silence and subtle motion, it invites reflection, offering an experience that lingers long after the last step is taken and the door closes behind the visitor. Offering an experience that lingers long after the last step is taken and the door closes behind the visitor. San Antonio de Padua at Pecos sits quietly amidst the high plains, its adobe walls weathered by wind, sun, and the passage of centuries. Once a major hub for settlers and travelers, it was a place of arrival and departure, of horses, wagons, and footsteps that carried goods, messages, and hope. Today, the village is largely deserted, yet the echoes of its history remain, layered into the very air, stone, and paths. During the day, the mission appears peaceful. Sunlight bathes the buildings in warm tones, illuminating worn doorways and cracked walls. Visitors walking the grounds can see remnants of activity, scattered stones where walls once stood higher, the faint outlines of former fences, and traces of paths that guided horses and wagons long ago. The place feels still but not empty, as though the past lingers quietly, waiting to be remembered. As evening approaches, the atmosphere begins to shift. Shadows lengthen across the adobe, and the wind carries a chill that seems to come from the earth itself. The high plains open wide, allowing the smallest sounds to travel long distances. The quiet here is different from any ordinary silence. It is heavy, deliberate, and layered, containing the memory of countless footsteps and the presence of those who once passed this way. It is after dark that visitors report the most striking experiences. The sound of horse hooves can be heard clattering along empty paths. The sound carries clearly across the open ground, echoing from walls and broken structures. The footsteps of travelers accompany the sound in some reports, though their owners are never seen. The combination creates the impression of life continuing, of the Mishnah's bustling activity somehow replaying itself under the quiet of night. It is precise, deliberate, and oddly comforting despite the eeriness. Figures appear in doorways along the mission's central structures. They are often faint at first, blurred by distance or dim light. Standing upright, still, and motionless, they seem to observe the visitor rather than interact. Some are dressed as settlers might have been, cloaked and carrying goods or tools. While others appear simpler, kneeling or leaning briefly before vanishing entirely. Approaching these figures causes them to dissolve into the darkness. No trace remains. The sand or earth beneath them is undisturbed. Their presence feels purposeful but fleeting, a memory made visible for a moment before retreating into the past. These encounters do not alarm, instead, they evoke a deep awareness of time layered into place. The walls of the mission seem to hum with energy after dark. This sensation is subtle, not a sound but a feeling pressing against the skin and awareness. Standing near the main structures, visitors often describe a vibration or pulse, like the walls themselves are alive, holding the tension of centuries of activity and devotion. The effect is not uncomfortable but undeniable, amplifying the sensation that history is not static. Eerie, it moves, breathes, and observes. Wind passing through the courtyards and broken arches can enhance this feeling. Sounds carry strangely across open areas, bending and stretching into echoes that are almost human in their cadence. Every small noisy rustling fabric, shifting stone, distant aula gains significance within the layered quiet. The mind becomes attuned, noticing details that daylight and bustle would have concealed. The experiences at San Antonio de Padua are consistent across reports. The clatter of hooves. Figures in doorways. The hum of energy in walls. The phenomenon does not rely on visible ghosts or frightening imagery. It is subtle, atmospheric, and immersive, tied to place and memory rather than spectacle. Visitors find themselves observing, listening, and feeling in a way that connects them to the mission's past. The history of the site provides context. The mission was a hub of trade, worship, and travel. Horses carried settlers and supplies. Conversations, prayers, and footsteps filled the courtyards. Every day, the mission was alive with movement and purpose. Over time, as activity ceased, the physical structures remained, holding the traces of life within their adobe walls. At night, under the quiet sky, these traces seem to resurface. Skeptics suggest explanations. Wind and temperature shifts can create sounds resembling hooves. Shadows and low light can suggest figures where none exist. The feeling of hum or vibration may be a response to structural shifts or the settling of adobe. These ideas offer logical grounding, yet they fail to capture the consistency and emotional weight reported by visitors. Remaining at the mission for an extended period can be disorienting. The repetition of subtle sounds, the fleeting glimpses of figures, and the hum in the walls can create a sense of timelessness. The place feels alive without being animated, watched without being intrusive. Movement and sound, history and present, converge in a quiet rhythm that is deeply perceptible to those willing to notice. Leaving the site brings relief. Yet memory lingers. The sound of hooves on empty paths. The figures that vanished before approach. The walls vibrating with unseen inertia. These impressions persist long after the night ends. They leave a subtle but profound awareness of the space. The lives that passed through it. And the continuing resonance of human presence. San Antonio de Padua at Pecos does not rely on dramatic displays or sudden shocks. Its power is in continuity and atmosphere, in the way history imprints itself on adobe, sand, and stone. Every step taken after sunset is a reminder that the mission was once alive, and that, in its own quiet way, it still is. Visitors leave not with fear, but with recognition. They feel the weight of centuries, the pulse of memory. And the fleeting glimpse of lives that shaped this place. The church, the pathways, and the open plains together create an experience of awareness and connection. Where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. And the past becomes tangible. The church, the pathways, and the open plains together create an experience of awareness and connection, where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. Where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. And the past becomes tangible. The church, the pathways, and the open plains together create an experience of awareness and connection, where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. Where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. And the past becomes tangible. The church, the pathways, and the open plains together create an experience of awareness and connection, where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. Where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. And the past becomes tangible. The church, the pathways, and the open plains together create an experience of awareness and connection, where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. Where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. And the past becomes tangible. The church, the pathways, and the open plains together create an experience of awareness and connection, where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. Where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. And the past becomes tangible. The church, the pathways, and the open plains together create an experience of awareness and connection, where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. Where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. And the past becomes tangible. The church, the pathways, and the open plains together create an experience of awareness and connection, where time stretches, and the past becomes tangible. San Antonio de Padua, Pecos stands as a silent witness. Accessible yet profoundly immersive. Its presence at night transforms space into experience. Hooves, figures, and hum converge into a quiet symphony of memory. Leaving those who visit with an understanding that the past has not vanished, it continues to move, just beyond the edges of perception. San Jose copyright de la Monta ± a in Chimaya superscript 3 rises gently from the surrounding hills, its adobe walls glowing softly under the sunlight. The church has long been known for its healing shrine, drawing pilgrims from near and far. The air around the structure carries the faint scent of incense and earth, and the path leading to the entrance is worn smooth by countless footsteps over generations. Visitors approach with reverence, expecting peace and reflection, yet the building holds something deeper, something unseen. Inside, the nave stretches wide, lined with wooden pews that have been polished by time and devotion. Sunlight filters through stained glass, casting colorful patterns across the stone floor. The walls themselves seem to hum softly with history, holding the echoes of prayers and whispered hopes. Those who enter the church during the day often notice sudden cold spots along the nave. The air shifts abruptly, chilling the skin, yet the temperature in the surrounding space remains unchanged. These pockets of cold seem concentrated, moving as visitors walk, brushing against shoulders and hands. Many pause to adjust or gather warmth, puzzled by the sudden sensation. It is never threatening, but it is insistent, impossible to ignore. Pilgrims report seeing figures kneeling at the altar even when the church is empty. They appear quietly, motionless, facing the shrine with a focus that feels profound. Their features blurred as if the light and shadow themselves formed their shapes. Sometimes they vanish when approached, dissolving like mist into the air, leaving only the stillness of the altar behind. Other times they remain, patient and silent, as though bound to the act of prayer. Those who sit or kneel near the altar sometimes feel a sudden pressure on their chest while praying. It is not suffocating, but it is immediate, heavy, as though the weight of unseen devotion or the focus of unseen eyes has settled upon them. Breathing becomes more deliberate, and the heartbeat rises slightly in response. The sensation fades gradually, yet it leaves a lingering awareness of something larger than oneself in the room. The combination of cold spots, figures, and pressure creates an atmosphere that is difficult to describe. The church feels alive in subtle ways. Light and shadow shift just enough to suggest movement. And the quiet hum of air against walls becomes almost vocal, as though the building itself breathes alongside those inside. Pilgrims often pause to observe, noting how the familiar architectural forms seem altered by presence and memory. History contributes to the intensity. San Jose copyright de la Monta ± has stood for centuries, bearing witness to countless acts of devotion, moments of healing, and whispered confessions. Every person who has knelt, prayed, or crossed the threshold has left an imprint upon the space. The adobe walls, wooden beams, and stone floors hold fragments of human hope, echoing faintly in the senses of those who enter. Each visit, especially at quiet hours, feels layered with generations of unseen attention. The shrine itself occupies the center of focus. Pilgrims approach with intent, often feeling a combination of awe and apprehension. Candles flicker in response to drafts that cannot be accounted for. Light catches the edges of the altar in unexpected ways. The figures, kneeling or fading, seem drawn to this sacred center. Even when the room is otherwise empty, the presence of devotion persists. Visitors moving through the nave describe a rhythm to their experience. Cold spots appear as steps are taken. Shadows seem to stretch and shift along the walls. Figures kneel briefly or remain throughout prayer. The pressure on the chest arises unpredictably, yet never feels accidental. Time itself appears altered, with moments stretching and compressing as if influenced by attention and intent. The church does not frighten. It does not demand action. Instead, it engages the senses subtly, calling attention to the sacred space and the history it contains. Those sensitive to atmosphere feel the presence most strongly, while others may perceive only hints of a chill in the air, a shadow moving along the floor, a weight in the chest. The effect is cumulative, building an awareness that the building itself is part of the devotional act. At times, the experience is most intense during evening hours, when sunlight fades and artificial light casts long shadows along the walls. The nave becomes darker, the altar more prominent, and every shift in light emphasizes the figures kneeling or fading. The quiet of the church magnifies subtle sounds of the brush of air, the creak of wood, the faint hum of movementa, all contributing to the impression that the building observes with careful attention. Those who pray in this environment often report leaving with a profound sense of connection. The sensations, though unsettling at first, deepen focus and reflection. The cold spots, figures, and pressure are reminders that the space is not merely empty but filled with history and attention. A continuous presence formed over centuries of devotion. By morning, the church appears calm and ordinary again. Light fills the nave, shadows retreat, and the air warms. Candles burn steadily, and the altar is still. Yet the memory of the night lingers for visitors. They recall the chill of the air, the presence kneeling silently, the weight that pressed gently during prayer. The experience leaves a lasting impression of a space that is both sacred and attentive, alive with devotion beyond immediate perception. San Jose Copyright de la Monta ± in Chimaya Superscript 3 remains a place of faith and reflection. Its walls contain history. Its floors carry memory. And its air responds to the focus of those within. Visitors continue to come seeking healing and solace. And though the church may be empty of people at times, it is never truly empty of awareness. The cold, the figures, and the presence remind all who enter that this is a space where devotion and history converge. And where the act of prayer is shared with those who have come before. San Juan Bautista in Laguna rises quietly from the surrounding landscape, its adobe walls aged by sun, wind, and time. By day, the church feels serene and steady. Sunlight filters through narrow windows, illuminating worn wooden pews and the polished stone floor. Visitors move slowly, sensing the weight of centuries of devotion, a calm that has persisted through generations of prayer, ceremony, and reflection. Yet beneath the calm, the church carries a subtle intensity, a presence that becomes noticeable as daylight fades. As evening approaches, the air cools, and the long shadows of the walls stretch across the floor. The adobe absorbs the fading light, deepening corners and archways into darker shapes. Every step taken inside the church echoes differently at this hour, each sound amplified by the stillness that surrounds it. When night settles fully, the atmosphere of San Juan Bautista shifts noticeably. Visitors report hearing whispers calling their names. The sound is soft, carried along the hallways and across the nave, intimate yet distant at the same time. The voice does not shout, nor does it demand attention, but it is distinct enough to halt movement and focus the mind. When one turns toward the source, there is nothing visible. The air feels unchanged, yet the sound lingers, impossible to ignore. Along with the whispers, lights occasionally glow briefly in the sacristy. They ignite without explanation, casting a warm, soft illumination across the small room. Before dimming once more. The glow highlights religious icons and ancient furnishings, creating fleeting patterns of light and shadow that seem to move with a subtle purpose. Those who witness this phenomenon often describe a sense of awe mixed with unease. As though the room itself has momentarily come to life. Shadowy figures are also reported gliding along the hallways. Their movements are smooth and deliberate, yet no footprints or traces are left behind. They are fleeting, appearing only for a moment before vanishing into the darkness. Observers often catch glimpses from the corner of their eye, a shifting silhouette that seems aware of their presence yet refuses direct acknowledgement. The combination of whispers, sudden light, and moving shadows creates a tangible tension. The experience is not frightening, but it is undeniably compelling, drawing attention to the layers of history embedded in every wall, every stone, and every beam of San Juan Bautista. The history of the church provides context for these experiences. Built centuries ago, it has hosted generations of worshippers, caretakers, and travelers seeking solace or guidance. Countless prayers have been offered here, and ceremonies repeated day after day, year after year. It is as if the energy of those who once moved through the church has left a permanent impression on the space. The whispered names, the sudden light, the shadowy movements at each can be seen as an echo of devotion and memory. The figures gliding along the hallways do not threaten. They simply occupy the space that was once theirs, reminders of the people who walked these floors before. The glowing sacristy may be a reflection of continued reverence, a gentle signal that the rituals of the past are remembered even in absence. Time inside the church seems to flow differently. Moments stretch, and silence becomes layered, filled with subtle, almost imperceptible cues that something unseen is present. Visitors often report a heightened awareness of sound and movement, noticing details that during the day might go completely unnoticed. A soft creak, a shifting shadow, or a flicker of light feels significant in a way that is hard to explain. Even standing still, the air feels active. A slight movement of air or a subtle change in temperature can be enough to make one aware of the presence that fills the building. It is not a threatening energy, but it is undeniable. The church seems to watch, record, and respond. Many who spend time in San Juan Bautista at night leave with a sense of humility and wonder. The experiences here are brief yet lasting, embedding themselves in memory. They recall the centuries of devotion, the prayers that have echoed through the halls, and the quiet persistence of presence that continues long after the day has ended. By morning, sunlight returns warmth and clarity to the church. Shadows retreat, the sacristy lights extinguish, and the whispers fade into memory. The pews and walls appear as they always have, solid and unchanging. To a daytime visitor, the church may seem like nothing unusual has occurred. But those who experienced its nighttime presence carry the imprint of something enduring and profound. San Juan Bautista remains a testament to faith, history, and quiet mystery. The whispered names, the brief illumination, and the shadowy figures are reminders that some spaces hold more than their physical form, preserving memory, devotion, and presence across the centuries. Night at San Juan Bautista is not merely darkness. It is a continuation of centuries of reverence. A quiet conversation between past and present. A space where visitors may sense that history and spirit linger, ever watchful, ever alive, in a church that has borne witness to devotion across time. Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe stands quietly on a raised plaza, its adobe walls warm under the sun and weathered by centuries of devotion. The bell tower rises above, steady and unchanging, while courtyards and gardens offer a calm space for reflection. Visitors often pause to take in the details, noticing the aged wood, hand-carved doors, and the quiet presence that seems to have settled into every corner of the structure. Inside, the mission feels intimate despite its size. Thick adobe walls support low ceilings, and pews are arranged to guide attention toward the altar. Light filters through small windows, creating patterns across the stone floor. The air carries the faint scent of candles and polished wood, mixed with the history of prayer and ritual. In daylight, the space encourages contemplation and reverence, offering visitors a sense of grounding and calm. As evening approaches, the atmosphere shifts. The warm adobe, so inviting in the light, begins to feel heavier, almost attentive. Silence fills the air, broken only by distant wind or the occasional creak of the building settling. It is in these quiet hours that many report the first signs of the mission's unusual presence. Faint music is often heard when no instrument is playing. Visitors describe the sound as soft, ethereal, and melodic, carrying through the pews and along the walls. The sound may resemble choral voices or distant strings, gentle and reverent, as though a hymn has started without a congregation. The sound drifts through the air, rising and falling subtly, and often vanishes as quickly as it appears. Those who attempt to locate the source find none. No choir, no instruments, no speakers. The music seems to exist independently, tied not to human action but to the space itself. Listening closely, the notes seem to interact with the acoustics of the mission, weaving through arches, alcoves, and hallways. Each time it is heard, the music feels purposeful, deliberate, and deeply rooted in the Buildinga's history. In addition to the music, figures are sometimes seen kneeling by statues and altars. They appear silent, still, and wholly absorbed in devotion. The outlines suggest human form, yet their features are never clear. When visitors approach, the figures vanish, leaving only the space they occupied. And a lingering sense of presence. The experience is quiet and solemn, more reverent than threatening. Yet deeply affecting. The feeling of being watched is constant. Even when no figures or music are perceived, visitors describe an acute awareness of the Mishnah's interior. Every shadow, every flicker of light, and every small creak of floorboards is heightened. The walls, heavy with adobe and age, seem to hold memory, absorbing attention and reflecting it subtly back. The space itself is alive with observation, patient and unobtrusive. The architecture amplifies these sensations. Thick walls carry sound. Low ceilings create intimacy. And alcoves focus attention on small details. Movement echoes differently in every corner. Whether real or imagined. This combination of space, sound, and shadow creates an immersive environment that is difficult to ignore. Visitors often describe a mixture of awe and unease. The music and figures are not threatening, but their presence is undeniable. They feel part of the mission, extensions of devotion and history rather than separate entities. The effect is cumulative, creating an experience where the past is tangible and the sense of continuity is palpable. The Mishnah's long history contributes to this atmosphere. For centuries, Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe has been a place of prayer, ritual, and labor. Countless individuals have shaped the building through construction, care, and worship. It is easy to imagine that some trace of those lives remains, reverberating through the architecture, the floors, and the air. Footsteps, prayers, and chants of past centuries may linger in subtle ways, reaching those attentive enough to notice. Even in complete darkness, the mission maintains its presence. Figures may be harder to see, music may become fainter, but the sense of observation remains. By morning, light returns and the mission takes on its daytime appearance. Walls glow warmly. Shadows shrink and straighten. The music fades completely. Figures are no longer visible. The space feels solid and ordinary, yet the impressions of night remain vivid in memory. Visitors leave with an awareness that the mission is more than stone and adobe. It is a vessel of devotion, memory, and presence. Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe continues to stand as it has for centuries. Its floors carry the echoes of footsteps long past. And its altars and statues remain sites of reverence. By day, the mission appears serene and grounded. By night, it becomes immersive and observant, revealing the lingering devotion of those who shaped it. For those who visit after dark, the experience is unforgettable. The music that plays without source, figures kneeling in silent prayer. The subtle constant sensation of being watched. The mission does not demand understanding or explanation. It simply exists, patient and enduring, offering a connection to devotion that transcends time. Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe is more than a building. It is memory made tangible, history made perceptible, and presence made alive. Visitors who walk its halls after dark leave carrying the sense that centuries of faith are still at work. Listening, observing, and quietly guiding attention. Through the warm, shadowed adobe walls. San Miguel Chapel sits quietly on the edge of Socorro, its adobe walls weathered by centuries of sun and wind. By day, it appears serene and enduring, a place of prayer and history, standing slightly apart from the town below. Visitors moving through the space notice the stillness, the way light shifts across the walls, and the scent of earth mingled with faint incense from past services. The chapel commands attention without effort. Its silhouette against the horizon is unmistakable, framed by the open sky and distant hills. As evening falls, the atmosphere begins to change. Shadows lengthen across the courtyard, stretching from the chapel walls toward the edges of the plaza. The air cools quickly, carrying the scent of desert and stone. The town below grows quieter, leaving the isolated chapel even more pronounced against the darkening sky. Footsteps sound more clearly across the stone paths, even when no one is near. At night, visitors sometimes hear pacing. Footsteps echo in the courtyard, measured and deliberate, crossing the open space without pattern or explanation. They sound heavy at first, then fade into light taps, circling near walls or the steps that lead to the chapel doors. Those who listen often pause, scanning the darkness, yet the paths remain empty. The sound carries a weight that seems both human and beyond, as if someone is retracing familiar steps from centuries past. Doors sometimes swing open by themselves. The main entrance or side doors may move slowly, swinging outward on hinges that have long since been oiled or left unused. The motion is gentle but noticeable, enough to catch the attention of anyone nearby. The air shifts with the movement, carrying faint drafts that seem colder than the desert night. The doors return to stillness without intervention, leaving a sense that the chapel itself has acknowledged presence. Within the chapel, the pulpit holds stories. Visitors have reported hearing sermons echoing from the empty pulpit. The words are low and indistinct, phrases rising and falling in cadence without forming complete sentences. The voice carries the cadence of prayer or teaching, as though a minister is speaking to an unseen congregation. The sound fills the nave and ripples softly into adjoining rooms. The echo of sermons is not constant. It comes in waves, rising from the pulpit without visible cause and fading just as quickly. Those who remain silent may hear it multiple times, as though the chapel itself has chosen when to speak. The sound is not frightening, but carries weight, drawing attention to the depth of history and ritual embedded in the walls. The combination of footsteps, swinging doors, and distant voices creates a unique atmosphere. Each element alone might be explained by wind, structure, or imagination. The surrounding landscape adds to the effect. Visitors often describe a sense of continuity, as if the chapel retains not only sound and movement but memory. Open desert stretches beyond the chapel, its flat plains and distant hills emphasizing the isolation of the site. The wind carries sound clearly, and the cool night air moves unimpeded through doors and corridors. Shadows are deep and shifting, stretching from walls and archways in ways that challenge perception. The chapel feels both open and enclosed, inviting exploration while demanding attention. Those who linger often feel a quiet tension. The courtyard becomes a stage for subtle phenomena, footsteps echoing, doors moving, whispers from within. Time seems slower, more deliberate. Each movement and sound draws attention to the present, but also to the past. The chapel is both space and memory, its walls absorbing centuries of ritual and devotion, releasing fragments when the conditions are right. The chapel never acts aggressively. The movement is gentle, the sound soft, the atmosphere calm yet charged with awareness. By dawn, the chapel returns to stillness. Sunlight warms the adobe walls. Doors remain closed. The courtyard is empty. Footsteps vanish, leaving only the ordinary sounds of wind and distant town activity. The echoes of the night persist in memory, but the building appears unchanged, grounded, and serene. San Miguel Chapel at Socorro stands as both history and presence. Its adobe walls hold the imprint of centuries of devotion. Footsteps echo on stone paths that seem to lead nowhere. Doors swing gently as if acknowledging invisible visitors. Sermons rise softly from the empty pulpit. By night, the chapel reveals layers of time, memory, and subtle motion, blending beauty, history, and mystery into a single, immersive experience. Visitors leave with a lasting impression. The sounds and movements linger in thought long after stepping away. the chapel's quiet endurance and subtle life remain in memory. A reminder that some places hold more than stone and wood. They hold echoes, rituals, and presence, waiting to be experienced when the world grows still and the night surrounds the mesa. San Juan de los Caballeros stands quietly near the historic villages of Oque Oinja, its adobe walls glowing softly in the early morning light. The mission was built centuries ago, its purpose rooted in faith, community, and connection to the surrounding land. The mission was built centuries ago, its purpose rooted in faith, community, and connection to the surrounding land. Today, it rests amidst open fields and ancient paths, a place where history lingers in the walls, in the air, and in the space between sun and shadow. Today, it rests amidst open fields and ancient paths, a place where history lingers in the walls, in the air, and in the space between sun and shadow. During the day, the mission appears calm and solid. Visitors moving through the grounds notice the texture of the adobe, the way light spills across benches and floors, and the careful symmetry of arches and windows. The air carries the scent of earth and weathered wood, grounding those who walk through in the quiet weight of centuries. Even in daylight, there is a sense that the mission is more than its walls. The space feels layered, occupied by echoes of ceremonies, footsteps, and voices long gone. As evening approaches, shadows stretch along the walls and across the courtyard. The sun dips behind distant hills, and the light becomes low and diffuse. The surrounding land grows quieter, the wind carrying sounds from afar across open plains. By this time, the mission begins to feel different. As though the calm it projects by day masks a deeper presence that emerges in twilight and darkness. Visitors arriving at early hours often report faint chanting. The sound rises softly, seeming to emerge from the mission itself, though no one is present. It is rhythmic, gentle, almost meditative, echoing along the walls and reverberating through arches. The chanting fades as quickly as it begins, leaving a profound quiet in its place, yet the sensation of another presence remains. The source of the chanting is never visible. It does not correspond to movement in the courtyard, doors opening, or activity in nearby buildings. Those who hear it describe a pull of awareness, a subtle drawing of attention toward the walls and windows where the sound seems to originate. Listening carefully, it is possible to feel the repetition of sound within the space, almost as if the mission itself is breathing with the rhythm of prayer and reflection. Figures are sometimes reported along the walls or at the windows. They appear briefly, blurred by darkness or distance, stationary and observing. Some are described as standing, others kneeling, yet all seem purposeful, a presence connected to the architecture rather than the air around it. Approaching these figures causes them to fade into shadow, leaving only the adobe and the quiet courtyard behind. No traces remain. No footprints or movement mark their departure. Visitors entering the sanctuary often experience sudden chills. The air within the thick walls feels cold, pressing against skin and awareness. Even on warm days, the sensation is not gradual, it arrives quickly. Accompanied by an inexplicable tightening of the chest and a sense of heightened alertness. For some, this moment brings an unsteady awareness, a brief panic, or the feeling of being observed. The interior of the mission amplifies these effects. Low ceilings, thick walls, and narrow windows create an environment where sound behaves differently. Carrying faint echoes of footsteps, murmurs, or the distant chanting. A single creak of wood or shift in air becomes significant. Every detail matters, and the mind becomes attuned to the rhythm of the building itself. Even in the absence of visible figures or sound, the feeling of observation persists. The mission seems to respond to presence, offering subtle awareness rather than overt activity. This effect is not frightening in a dramatic way, but creates a constant attention. A sense that the space is alive with memory. Layered history. And the resonance of human life long past. Locals familiar with San Juan de los Caballeros speak quietly of the early hours. They acknowledge the subtle sounds, the fleeting figures, and the cold drafts, yet describe them with respect rather than fear. The mission is sacred, its presence layered with both spiritual and historical significance. Those who walk its grounds at night or dawn experience a continuity of awareness, a direct connection to the centuries of activity that shaped the space. The architecture itself contributes to the experience, allowing whispers or distant noises to appear close and focused. The angle of light, and the quiet of the surrounding valley combine to make perception heightened, creating a powerful, immersive experience for those present. Even for visitors without prior knowledge of the mission's history, these phenomena are consistent. Chanting emerges. Figures appear at walls and windows. Sudden chills occur in the sanctuary. Awareness of presence does not diminish until leaving the space. The combination of history, architecture, and quiet creates a unique environment where subtle activity feels vivid, immersive, and memorable. Remaining in the mission for extended periods enhances the sensation. Sounds become sharper, shadows more noticeable, and the air more immediate. The interplay of history and perception creates an atmosphere where time feels suspended. The past overlaps with the present, and the visitor becomes aware of layers of life, devotion, and human presence carried in the walls and courtyard. Leaving the mission brings relief. The sensations fade, the chills subside, and the space returns to quiet. Yet memory retains the impressions of chanting, figures, and the hum of energy within the adobe. Visitors carry these experiences with them, aware that San Juan de los Caballeros exists as both structure and living memory, a place where history, perception, and presence intertwine. San Juan de los Caballeros at Oque Oinja is a site of quiet power. It is not dramatic or threatening, but immersive. Every wall, window, and corridor holds echoes of human activity. Chanting drifts through the early hours. Figures appear and vanish. Cold drafts and sudden awareness remind visitors that the mission is more than stone and adobe. It is alive with centuries of devotion, movement, and memory, offering those who enter an experience that lingers long after they depart. San Miguel Arca, Angel and Las Trampas rises from the high plains like a timeless sentinel, its adobe walls glowing softly in the sunlight. The church is iconic, a testament to centuries of craftsmanship, devotion, and the blending of cultures that shaped the region. The thick walls and wooden beams carry both weight and history, anchoring the structure against wind, weather, and time. Visitors approach along worn paths, their footsteps muted by sand and stone, aware that this is a place that has observed generations. Inside, the nave stretches wide, its open space illuminated by natural light filtering through small windows. The scent of aged wood and dust is faint but persistent. The wooden pews, polished over decades of worship, line the floor, leading toward the altar, where carved figures and paintings recall long-forgotten ceremonies. The church feels quiet, yet it is alive with memory. The air seems dense with history, almost listening to each step, each movement, where carved figures and paintings recall long-forgotten ceremonies. The wooden pews, polished over decades of worship, line the floor, leading toward the altar. The church feels quiet, yet it is alive with memory. The air seems dense with history, almost listening to each step, each movement. Visitors often notice the corner chapels first. Small alcoves, intimate in scale, reveal details too subtle to perceive from the main aisle. They move across the walls in ways that are difficult to explain, forming shapes that resemble figures kneeling or standing in devotion. They are subtle, never threatening, yet impossible to ignore. Candles along the walls flicker without wind. The flames dance and bend, casting elongated shadows that stretch across the floor and ceiling. The movement is gentle but deliberate, independent of drafts or passing footsteps. Visitors often pause to observe, captivated by the contrast between still air and dancing light. The flickering illuminates the details of the adobe, revealing textures and carvings that might otherwise go unnoticed. And it enhances the sense that the church itself is a living witness to centuries of worship. The most extraordinary experiences occur when the building is quiet, when only the faint echoes of footsteps or voices exist. In these moments, whispers drift through the air, soft and unintelligible, yet unmistakably present. They resemble prayers once spoken aloud, carried from chapel to nave, repeated over time by those who knelt and offered devotion. The whispers are not loud, not intrusive, but they create a rhythm that seems entwined with the breath of the building itself. Listening closely, visitors may sense patterns, fragments of language long forgotten, reverberating as if the church remembers the prayers of the faithful. Walking along the main aisle, the effect of these elements is cumulative. Shadows appear in the corner chapels. Candles flicker unexpectedly. Whispers drift along walls and arches. The building feels larger and smaller at once, open yet intimate, still yet profoundly alive. Visitors often become aware of subtle pressure in the chest, a sensation of being observed or accompanied. The presence is not hostile, but it is insistently attentive, focused on those who enter the sacred space. The architecture contributes to the experience. Thick adobe walls retain warmth and sound. Wooden beams and arches create pockets of resonance. Each alcove, each recess, modifies light, shadow, and sound. What is ordinary in daylight becomes extraordinary under the soft interplay of candlelight and natural shadow. The building itself shapes perception, enhancing awareness and amplifying subtle phenomena. The history of San Miguel Arcángel intensifies the atmosphere. Built in the early 18th century, has witnessed generations of worship, ceremonies, festivals, and quiet devotion. Every person who entered, every prayer spoken, every candle lit has left an imprint. These impressions emerge at night or during moments of quiet attention, manifesting as flickering shadows, sudden chills, or whispered echoes. Some visitors interpret the experience as a continuation of devotion, a subtle invitation to acknowledge the history contained within the walls. Others describe it as a haunting presence, not frightening but insistent, a reminder that time does not erase memory. Regardless of interpretation, the sensations leave a lasting impression, reinforcing the sense that the church is alive in a way that transcends the visible and tangible. Even the silence is meaningful. In the absence of other sounds, every movement resonates. The shifting of a shadow, the flicker of a candle, the faint whisper of air through a small window becomes noticeable, significant, almost purposeful. Visitors adjust their attention, attuning to details that are easy to miss during daylight or amidst a crowd. The experience heightens awareness, drawing each person into the rhythm of the place. Walking through San Miguel Arcángel, visitors often feel time stretch and compress. A few minutes can feel longer, moments of observation become profound, and the sense of continuity between past and present is heightened. The church becomes not just a building, but a vessel carrying centuries of ritual, devotion, and memory. Shadows and light, whispers and flickers, combine to create a perception of ongoing life within the walls. By morning, the experience shifts again. Sunlight softens the adobe, revealing textures and colors that appear ordinary after nightfall. Shadows retract, whispers fade, and the flickering of candles becomes normal, responding only to drafts or movement. Yet the memory of the night lingers for those who witnessed the subtle phenomena. Shadows kneeling in chapels. Candles bending against the still air. Whispers of prayers long forgotten remain vivid. Etched in mind as well as in memory of the church itself. San Miguel Arcángel, Las Trampas, continues to stand as both sanctuary and witness. It invites the faithful, the curious, and the observant. It welcomes prayers and presence, yet reminds all who enter that the building itself carries history and memory. Shadows, light, and whispers persist, not as threats, but as signs of the enduring life within adobe walls, a quiet testament to devotion and the passage of centuries. Visitors leave with a sense of wonder, carrying the weight of centuries within their awareness. The church remains, iconic and attentive, ever alive in subtle, profound ways, and continuing to embody the faith, memory, and history that have defined it for generations. San Esteban del Rey stands atop a gentle rise, commanding a wide view of the surrounding desert. Its adobe walls glow softly in the sun, warming the courtyard, and casting long shadows across the worn stone paths. By day, the mission feels serene, a place of contemplation and history. Visitors walk carefully along the cloisters, taking in the centuries of construction, devotion, and human presence that have shaped this remarkable site. The desert stretches endlessly beyond the walls, empty and quiet, emphasizing the isolation of the mission. Its location made it both a place of refuge and a beacon for those who lived nearby. The land itself seems patient, absorbing sun and wind, holding the echoes of a long history beneath the earth and within the adobe. As the day fades, the atmosphere begins to shift. The warm colors of sunset retreat, leaving cool shadows across the mission. Every archway, every niche, every beam of wood seems heavier, more deliberate in its presence. The air grows still, and the sounds of birds and wind diminish, leaving the subtle hum of the desert and the quiet weight of time. Visitors staying late into the evening sometimes report faint hammering sounds. The noise is soft at first, like distant work being carried out by unseen hands. It rises and falls rhythmically, steady but irregular, echoing along the walls and across the courtyard. No source to be found. No tools. No workers. Yet the sound persists for moments long enough to pause and draw attention. Alongside the sounds, shadows appear on the walls, moving with purpose. They stretch and bend, forming shapes that resemble figures at work. Some observers describe the movements as deliberate, as though construction continues in secret, hands shaping materials that are invisible. The shadows vanish when approached, leaving walls unmarked and spaces empty, yet the impression of activity lingers. The sensation inside the mission is unmistakable. The space feels alive in its own way. Every corner, every arch, every adobe wall seems to hold memory, responding subtly to the presence of those who enter. The air itself feels charged, carrying the energy of decades and even centuries of work, prayer, and devotion. This energy is not threatening. It is pervasive, quiet, and insistently aware. Visitors often describe standing still, feeling the weight of history pressing gently around them. Even breathing becomes noticeable, each inhale and exhale magnified by the stillness of the evening. The Mission's history provides context for these experiences. San Esteban del Rey was built through the labor of many hands over generations. Every beam raised, every wall plastered, every stone laid carried purpose and care. Daily life included tasks that required precision, attention, and patience, often repeated for months and years to maintain and expand the structure. The echo of that labor appears to linger, detectable in the sound, the shadow, and the atmosphere. Walking through the cloisters at night heightens the effect. The faint hammering can seem to follow a rhythm that mirrors construction practices from long ago. The shadows move with measured intent, resembling hands shaping adobe, raising walls, or carving details. Though the work is invisible, the effect is convincing, creating a sense that the mission is simultaneously past and present, occupied yet empty. The courtyard itself is especially alive with sensation. The open space allows sound to travel, reflecting lightly against the surrounding walls. Shadows stretch unnaturally when candlelight is introduced, bending and shifting along the adobe, creating a subtle visual rhythm that accompanies the sounds. Observers often describe a feeling of connection, as if witnessing centuries of labor condensed into brief, inexplicable moments. The energy of the mission can feel almost tangible. Some describe tingling sensations along arms or shoulders, not startling, but undeniable. The effect is cumulative. The longer one remains, the more pronounced the feeling, as though the mission has absorbed patience, care, and attention over decades and is now offering it back in quiet, subtle ways. These experiences are fleeting yet lasting. Visitors leave the mission carrying a heightened awareness of history, craft, and devotion. The hammering fades into memory. The shadows vanish from walls. The air returns to normal temperature. Yet the impression of presence, of energy retained within adobe and stone, remains. By morning, San Esteban del Rey resumes its daylight identity. Sunlight warms walls and courtyards. Shadows retreat. The mission appears peaceful and still. Walkways, arches, and courtyards are as they were before nightfall. There is no sign of invisible work or lingering presence. To casual observation, the mission is simply a historic structure preserved through time. But those who have stayed into the evening know the difference. They remember the rhythm of hammering with no source. The shadows gliding as if hands unseen shaped the adobe once more. And the charged air that made silence feel alive. They leave with an impression that history is not only recorded but persistent. Woven into walls, floors, and arches in ways that transcend memory alone. San Esteban del Rey stands today as a testament to faith, craft, and continuity. Its adobe walls hold centuries of labor and devotion. By day, it is admired for architecture and history. By night, it becomes a living space of subtle mystery, reminding visitors that energy, care, and attention can persist long after human presence has passed, leaving traces detectable only to those who pause and listen. San Francisco de Asís in Spa ± Ola rests quietly beneath the night sky, its adobe walls bathed in silver moonlight. By day, the church feels timeless, warm under the sun, and welcoming to visitors who admire its rounded corners and thick, earthen walls. The courtyard outside is open and calm, framed by shadows that stretch across the stone and sand, giving a sense of permanence to the structure. As darkness falls, the character of the church shifts. Light diminishes, leaving corners dim and undefined. The adobe walls, which seemed warm in daylight, begin to feel heavy, as if holding centuries of memory within them. The stillness grows profound, and the space seems to extend beyond the visible, carrying both silence and expectation. It is during these hours that figures are sometimes seen walking the perimeter of the church. They appear in silhouette against the walls, moving slowly, deliberately, as though following a path only they understand. They move with purpose, yet vanish if approached, leaving the observer alone with the adobe and moonlight. Inside, the church feels alive in ways that defy explanation. Footsteps echo through the empty corridors, slow and measured. They do not correspond to any visitor or staff member. The sound carries along the thick walls, bouncing off corners, filling the interior with rhythm and presence. Visitors often pause, listening closely, yet when they follow the sound, it disappears or shifts, as if the corridors themselves are moving. Some who explore the chapels at night describe sensations that are more tactile than auditory. Invisible hands seem to guide them along narrow aisles, pressing gently on shoulders or directing attention toward the altar. The feeling is subtle, not forceful, and leaves an impression that is deeply personal. It is as if the building itself participates in their movement, inviting reflection, prompting awareness. The architecture amplifies these experiences. Thick adobe walls hold sound differently than modern materials, capturing echoes and carrying them longer. Low ceilings and curved corners focus perception, making small noises appear larger, movements more deliberate. Every shadow seems layered with history, and the interplay of light and dark creates illusions that feel like presence. The interplay of light and dark creates illusions that feel like presence. Visitors often describe a profound emotional impact during these nocturnal experiences. The church feels both intimate and vast at the same time. The sense of being observed is constant, though never threatening. There is a quiet attentiveness, a weight that encourages awareness of every step, every breath. The figures, the footsteps, and the guiding touch combine to create an environment that is immersive, contemplative, and uncanny. Historical context adds to the resonance of the church. San Francisco de Azaz has stood for centuries, a site of faith, labor, and devotion. Countless individuals have walked its floors, prayed within its walls, and shaped its structure through care and construction. The memory of their presence seems embedded in the adobe, reflected in shadows, and heard in the echoes of footsteps that still appear when no one is present. At times, the sensation of invisible guidance intensifies near the altar and side chapels. Visitors report feeling drawn to specific areas, compelled to kneel or pause even without conscious thought. It is not coercion but an inexplicable sense of invitation. Movement through these spaces becomes deliberate, slowed by awareness, and punctuated by pauses that feel meaningful. The interplay of sight, sound, and sensation creates an atmosphere unlike any other. Figures walking the perimeter, footsteps echoing inside, and hands that seem to guide you. The interplay of sight, sound, and sensation creates an atmosphere unlike any other. Figures walking the perimeter, footsteps echoing inside, and hands that seem to guide you. The experience is cumulative, layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. This narrative that exists beyond the physical. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative, layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. A single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. Difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. An atmosphere unlike any other. Impossible to ignore. The interplay of sight, sound, and sensation creates an atmosphere unlike any other. Figures walking the perimeter, footsteps echoing inside. And hands that seem to guide. All contribute to a narrative that exists beyond the physical. A single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative. Layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. Into a single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative. Layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. Human and spiritual, into a single perception. A single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative. Layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. Into a single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative. Layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. Into a single perception. A single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative. Layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. Into a single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative. Layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. Into a single perception. A single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative. Layering the past and present, human and spiritual, into a single perception. Into a single perception. That is difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. The experience is cumulative. Even when no phenomena are observed, the church retains a presence that is deeply felt. The walls, the floors, and the air carry a weight of memory. Walking through the hallways at night, visitors report heightened sensitivity to every sound, shadow, and movement. Time feels altered. Moments stretch, and attention narrows to the immediate surroundings. By morning, the church returns to its daylight character. Warm light spills across adobe walls. Shadows shrink and become predictable. The interior feels solid, ordinary, and tangible. Footsteps and figures vanish. The guiding touch is no longer felt. The church appears as it always does. Yet those who have walked its corridors after dark remember clearly the sensation of presence. The figures that appear and vanish. The echoing footsteps. The subtle guidance that seemed to come from the very building itself. The memory lingers, creating a lasting impression that defines their visit. San Francisco de Oasis continues to stand as it has for centuries. Its adobe walls endure sun and wind. Its floors carry the echo of countless footsteps, and its chapels remain spaces of devotion and reflection. By day, it is serene and welcoming. By night, it becomes otherworldly, alive with the layered presence of those who came before, observing, guiding, and quietly watching those who enter. For visitors who experience it after dark, the church is more than architecture. It is memory made tangible, history made perceptible, and presence made alive. Figures walk unseen. Footsteps echo endlessly. Invisible hands guide through chapels. The building does not explain itself. It simply waits, patient, observant, and enduring. Offering a connection to centuries of faith that continues long after the sun has risen. San Jose in Las Cruces rises quietly amid the streets of the town, its adobe walls warm under the sun and its bell tower stretching skyward. By day, the church appears serene and inviting. Visitors move slowly across the worn stone floors, admiring the simple arches, carved wooden doors, and pews lined in orderly rows. Sunlight filters through stained glass, painting colored patterns across the floor and walls, and the air carries the subtle scent of aged wood and incense from services past. Even in daylight, the building feels layered with history. Each beam and adobe brick holds the weight of years, of worship, and of quiet observation. The pews are polished by centuries of presence, and the altar sits patiently, a focal point of devotion. As evening approaches, the church takes on a different quality. The sun lowers behind distant hills, casting long shadows across the plaza outside and along the thick walls. Cool air drifts through open windows and doorways, carrying scents of earth and distant desert winds. Visitors have reported doors closing on their own. They swing gently, sometimes enough to produce a soft thud that echoes along stone floors. Shadows begin to form along the pews. They stretch low across the floor, shifting as if guided by some subtle light beyond the visible. They do not resemble people fully, yet shapes suggest forms, slight movements, or figures kneeling or standing. From one angle, a shadow appears elongated, and from another, it seems to shift closer toward the altar, fading and reappearing in ways that defy natural explanation. Cold air gathers near the altar. Even on warm nights, the space surrounding the altar becomes noticeably cooler. The chill is concentrated and tangible, pressing gently against skin. Visitors feel its presence immediately, a contrast to the surrounding warmth. The air feels heavier here, as if carrying both weight and history within its subtle movement. Soft chanting sometimes rises from the bell tower. The sound is faint, layered with the wind and distant echoes from the plaza. The combination of doors, shadows, cold air, and chanting creates a unique atmosphere. It is immersive and deliberate, drawing visitors' awareness to the subtle motions and sounds around them. Time feels stretched. Every footstep, every creak, and every whisper seems amplified in the quiet. The church becomes a space where the past and present coexist, overlapping in perception and memory. The chapel itself seems to hold attention. It does not move suddenly or threaten. Instead, it responds to presence with subtle quasi. Shifting shadows, lingering cool air, sounds that appear to have purpose. The experience is not frightening in a conventional sense, but it is compelling, creating a sense of observation and awareness that is difficult to ignore. Visitors walking through the pews often notice changes in perception. Shadows seem to move when they glance away, doors appear slightly altered in angle, and the air near the altar grows heavier. Some describe a sense of being followed or observed, not by a person but by the building itself, as though it remembers all who have passed through. The bell tower amplifies this effect. Chants, soft and deliberate, rise from above. Their origin is impossible to locate precisely, yet their impact is clear. The repetition of sound across empty corridors and open space creates the sensation of presence, a layering of sound and architecture that holds attention and guides perception. Even as visitors attempt to leave, the memory lingers. Steps echo on stone floors, yet the echoes do not fully match physical movement. Doors may shift subtly, shadows trace lines that lead away from the exit, and the cool air clings longer than expected. The church impresses itself upon memory, shaping thought and sensation long after leaving the building. By morning, San Jose appears calm again. Sunlight warms adobe walls, and the pews sit in quiet order. Doors remain stationary. Shadows return to natural positions, and the air resumes ambient warmth. The church appears unchanged, yet those who remained after dark carry a sense of layered history, memory, and subtle presence that cannot be easily dismissed. San Jose in Las Cruces embodies both sanctuary and mystery. It preserves centuries of worship, human presence, and architectural artistry. At night, doors close on their own. Shadows form along the pews. Cold air gathers near the altar. Soft chanting rises from the bell tower. The building exists as both space and memory, teaching visitors to move slowly, observe carefully, and feel the enduring presence that lies within walls, floors, and beams. The chapel invites reflection and awareness. It is beautiful, silent, and commanding by day. Alive with subtle motion and sound. By night, visitors leave not only with images of adobe walls and wooden pews, but with a sense of connection to centuries of devotion. Echoes, and whispers. A reminder that some places carry presence beyond what the eye can see and the ear can hear. And the sense of connection that it evokes. A connection to centuries of devotion, echoes, and whispers. A reminder that some places carry presence beyond what the eye can see and the ear can hear. Nuestra C ± Hora de los Remedios rises quietly above the streets of Santa Fe, its adobe walls bathed in warm sunlight by day and soft shadows by evening. The church has stood for centuries, a place of devotion, reflection, and community. Its thick walls, wooden beams, and low-hanging arches carry history in every grain, every crevice, every worn step along the floors. Visitors often feel a weight here, a connection to centuries of worship, footsteps, and whispered prayers. During daylight hours, the church feels calm and sacred. Sunlight spills across the floors, warming the stone and adobe. The scent of incense and aged wood lingers faintly, a reminder of rituals performed across generations. The care in the architecture, the quiet beauty of arches and niches, and the peaceful atmosphere that invites reflection. The space feels alive with memory but safe, contained within its thick walls. As evening falls, the atmosphere subtly shifts. The warm tones of the walls deepen into rich shadows. Light filters through stained glass, casting colors that dance across floors and benches. The surrounding streets grow quieter, the noises of the city fading, leaving the church isolated in a deepening silence. In this quiet, subtle phenomena begin to make themselves known. Visitors report hearing whispers in Spanish. The voices are low, carried on the still air, repeating phrases of devotion and warning. They rise and fall, ebbing as if in rhythm with the heart of the building itself. Standing in the nave, one might hear fragments, words that are understandable yet impossible to trace to a specific source. The whispers come from corners, doorways, and even above, creating the sensation that the entire space is alive with sound, attuned to presence and attention. The whispers are never loud, never abrupt. They weave in and out of awareness, sometimes leaving moments of complete silence that feel heavier because of their absence. The repeated phrases carry intent, a sense of devotion and subtle warning that touches the visitor with a quiet intensity. Candles within the church sometimes ignite on their own. Flames flicker to life in niches or on altars without human touch. The glow is soft and steady, illuminating surrounding space just enough to suggest presence. Those who see it report that the effect is deliberate rather than erratic. The light does not surge or flare, it simply becomes visible where none was before, then continues until extinguished naturally or by a visitor. Walking the hallways and aisles, visitors sometimes notice figures kneeling in silence. These forms are faint at first, their outlines shaped by shadows and light. They remain motionless, immersed in prayer or meditation. Approaching them causes the figures to vanish, leaving only empty hallways and soft echoes of presence. No traces remain on floors or benches, yet the impression is profound. The brief vision evokes a sense of reverence and continuity, as though the church is quietly revealing its past occupants to those attentive enough to perceive them. The combination of whispers, sudden candles, and kneeling figures creates a layered, immersive experience. The church does not startle. It does not rush the visitor. Instead, it combines sound, light, and perception. Walking through the sanctuary becomes not only on history and devotion, but on the persistence of presence. The architecture contributes to these experiences. Thick adobe walls hold temperature and sound differently than modern materials. Shadows move unpredictably with the angle of the moon or artificial light. Corridors amplify small sounds, turning whispers into a layered hum. The layout guides perception, leading visitors from nave to aisle to altar, creating spaces where echoes are concentrated and attention is heightened. Even for visitors with no knowledge of the church's history, these phenomena are consistent. Whispers emerge. Candles light themselves. Figures kneel and vanish. The timing may vary, but the experiences remain recognizably the same. This consistency suggests that the church itself is a vessel for memory and devotion, a space where presence is recorded and reflected back to those who enter. Spending extended time within the church deepens the experience. They feel the layering of centuries of worship. They feel the layering of centuries of worship. They notice the subtle shifts in air and temperature. They notice the subtle shifts in air and temperature. They feel the layering of centuries of worship. They notice the subtle shifts in air and temperature. They feel the layering of centuries of worship. The whispers and lights provide a rhythm, a heartbeat of the space that is neither threatening nor alarming, but impossible to ignore. Each step, each glance, becomes part of a continuum that connects the present to past devotion. Leaving the church brings relief and a return to ordinary perception, yet memory retains the experience. The soft Spanish whispers echo in recollection. The glow of candles remains vivid. The kneeling figures linger in the mind, leaving a sense of awe and quiet reverence. Visitors often report carrying a heightened awareness for hours, as though the church's presence has extended beyond its walls. Nuestra C ± Hora de los Remedios is more than a building. It is a repository of history, devotion, and subtle phenomena. Every whisper, every candle, every fleeting figure reinforces the connection between those who entered, those who prayed, and the generations who passed through. It is a place where perception and memory converge, inviting attention, reflection, and respect. The Church does not demand belief. It does not reveal itself dramatically or violently. Its power is quiet, persistent, and immersive. Those who enter are drawn into a space where history breathes, where devotion resonates, and where the past and present meet in subtle, unmistakable ways. Visitors leave transformed not by fear, but by awareness. Sensing that within these adobe walls, presence endures. Whispering, glowing, and kneeling, even when no one is watching. San Miguel in Taos Pueblo rises quietly from the desert landscape, a structure of adobe and history that has endured for centuries. Its walls carry the weight of time, absorbing sunlight by day and releasing it slowly as night falls. The church is a living archive of devotion and tradition, a place where generations have gathered for worship, reflection, and ceremony. Even in moments of silence, the building feels present, aware, and imbued with memory. Visitors who enter the nave often notice a shift in atmosphere. The air feels thick, dense with history, and each step echoes more clearly than expected. Wooden beams overhead and the smooth adobe walls amplify sound in subtle ways, creating a resonance that seems to carry both the past and the present. Every movement, every whisper, seems to be observed, absorbed, and reflected back. In quiet moments, figures appear. Shadows coalesce into the forms of monks or priests. They move with purpose, deliberate in their steps, yet entirely silent. They do not turn, speak, or gesture. Their presence is observant, detached, and unwavering. Soft singing often accompanies these appearances. The sound drifts across the nave, faint and ethereal, carrying the tone of ancient hymns long forgotten. The voice is melodic, clear yet distant, as if coming from behind walls or from a place between the present and memory. Listeners cannot determine its source. The singing rises and falls with a natural rhythm, interacting with the echoes of footsteps and the resonance of the building itself. The air in the church grows heavy and cold without warning. The temperature drops suddenly, brushing against skin and penetrating clothing. Visitors feel the chill concentrate in pockets along the floor and aisles, then dissipate just as quickly. It is not harsh or painful, but the effect is undeniable, enhancing awareness and heightening every sense. Breathing slows instinctively, and the sound of one's own movement feels amplified. The sound of one's own movement feels amplified. These experiences are not fleeting. Visitors report long-lasting impressions of the shapes, the singing, and the sudden chills. The figures may vanish when directly approached, dissolving into shadows or blending with the light, yet the memory of their presence lingers. The singing persists even as the vision fades, echoing in the mind like a distant memory that refuses to disappear. The architecture of San. Thick adobe walls absorb sound and release it unevenly. Wooden beams and high ceilings create pockets of resonance. Alcoves and small chapels channel both light and shadow in ways that appear to shift with movement. Every detail of the building enhances perception, making visitors acutely aware of their surroundings. Ordinary steps, gestures, and whispers take on a heightened significance, as though the structure itself is attentive to their presence. The church's history adds another layer of depth. Priests, monks, and worshippers have walked its aisles. Their prayers and voices absorbed by the adobe and beams. Over generations, the space has accumulated the echoes of countless ceremonies, confessions, and reflections. These echoes appear to surface at night, during quiet hours, when the presence of few living witnesses allows the memory of the past to manifest. Visitors often describe the experience as humbling. The church does not threaten. The figures do not chase. The singing does not demand. Yet the weight of history is tangible. And the sudden cold emphasizes the importance of stillness and awareness. One becomes conscious of time differently, noticing the contrast between moments of observation and the centuries of worship the building has hosted. One becomes conscious of time differently, noticing the contrast between moments of observation and the centuries of worship the building has hosted. Walking the nave at night, one becomes aware of a rhythm. The footsteps of shadowy figures follow patterns reminiscent of rituals. The ethereal singing flows like a river through the space. Cold pockets punctuate each step, guiding attention to particular points along the aisle or near the altar. There is an unspoken connection between the visitor and the building, as though both are participating in a long-continuing act of presence and observation. Those who remain in the church often leave with lasting impressions. The figures of monks or priests are recalled with clarity. The sound of singing resonates in memory. Visitors reflect on the experience long afterward, recognizing the influence of place, history, and the subtle intersection of physical and spiritual memory. By morning, the atmosphere of San Miguel returns to calm. The church appears ordinary to casual observation. Yet those who have been present during the quiet hours know the difference. The space remains aware, layered with memory and subtle phenomena that do not vanish with daylight. San Miguel Arcángel in Taos Pueblo continues to exist as both a sacred site and a witness to centuries of devotion. Figures may pace silently in the nave. Singing may drift along the aisles. Cold air may rise without warning. The church does not demand understanding, nor does it explain itself. It simply holds presence, history, and memory, offering all who enter an encounter with a space that is alive, observant, and profoundly timeless. Thank you for exploring the haunted mission churches of New Mexico with me tonight. These sacred places were built to shelter the faithful, yet some spirits never left. They linger in chapels, corridors, and courtyards, carrying stories of devotion, loss, and unfinished prayers. If you ever find yourself inside a mission church after dark, listen carefully. The walls may speak, and the air may carry voices from the past. Would you dare spend a night among the haunted pews and corridors, surrounded by centuries of spirits, or would you leave before the first candle flickers? Rest well, my friend. Until our next haunted journey.